People used to stop us on the street. They'd whisper, "Look at them, they're perfect." But no one knew that perfection sometimes is the heaviest burden to carry. Chapter 1. The Golden Beginning. They used to call us the Golden Couple. Sometimes I wonder if that name cursed us, because gold, as beautiful as it looks, bends under pressure. Ethan and I were the kind of couple people stared at, not out of rudeness, but fascination, as if we'd stepped out of a painting. His presence was commanding, mine softer, but together we made sense, like sunlight and shadow, balancing each other out. We met at a charity gala in Los Angeles. I was there for my art students, painting life portraits to raise funds for underprivileged kids. He was there because his company had sponsored the event. I still remember him standing by the glass wall, talking to someone, light bouncing off his hair like it had a deal with heaven. He saw me before I saw him. He walked over, smiled, that impossible smile, and said, "Tell me you're real." I laughed. "I think so." "Well," he said, extending his hand, "then this might just be the luckiest night of my life." It was cliché, too polished, too practiced, but somehow genuine. And I fell for it. For him. We fell in love like it was easy. Maybe it was. We didn't argue, we didn't overthink, we just fit. He used to call me his calm, and I used to call him my chaos. And together, we built something so breathtaking that even time hesitated to touch it. After we got married, life turned golden. Literally. Our house by the coast glowed at sunset, our laughter echoed in every room, and our pictures, they could have sold dreams. I used to think love was supposed to feel exactly like that. A beautiful, unbroken melody. And when I told him I was pregnant, I saw him cry for the first time. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. He said, "You're my whole world now." And I believed him with every piece of me. Pregnancy changed me, not just my body, my world. I was tired all the time, swollen, emotional, but so in love with the life growing inside me that nothing else mattered. Ethan was attentive, ridiculously so. He'd bring me flowers every Friday, rub my feet after work, talk to my belly like it was already listening. And then our son Daniel was born. That day, when he held our baby for the first time, I saw the kind of pride that can't be described. He kissed my forehead and said, "You've never looked more beautiful." I knew I didn't, but I smiled anyway because I wanted to believe him. Our life became full. Diapers, bottles, laughter, exhaustion. Ethan worked long hours but always came home to kiss Daniel goodnight. I was proud of him, of us. But something subtle began to shift. It wasn't distance. It was overflow. Ethan had always been charming. It's what drew me to him in the first place. But as his business grew, that charm became his language with the world. He didn't just attend meetings, he owned them. Women adored him, not because he was flirtatious, but because he noticed things. Compliments rolled off his tongue naturally, effortless and warm. He'd tell me everything. That was the thing about Ethan. He shared everything. How the new marketing head had this incredible laugh. How a client's wife had eyes like a storm. How his assistant looked stunning in blue today. He wasn't hiding anything. He was talking to me like a friend. And I listened, always, because I wanted to be that for him. His home, his calm, his everything. But sometimes, after he'd finished talking, I'd sit in silence, smiling like I was okay, while something heavy pressed against my chest. I'd tell myself, "He's just open, Em. That's how he is." But late at night, when I'd be alone in the dark, those words he'd said about other women would replay, softly, endlessly. I'd catch myself wondering if he ever talked about me that way anymore. And that's the cruel part. When the person you love most makes you feel both safe and small at the same time. When I became pregnant again, I told myself it would fix everything. We'd be closer, busier, happier. But instead, I got heavier, physically, emotionally. Ethan was still as radiant as ever, running a company, charming the world, smiling like nothing had changed. And I couldn't find my reflection anymore. He'd come home, kiss my forehead, tell me about the dinner he had with a potential investor. She'd love her, Em. She's so sharp, so confident. And I'd nod, forcing a smile. Because if I didn't smile, he'd see the insecurity behind my eyes. He once asked me, "Why don't you talk about your day anymore?" I wanted to tell him, "Because my day feels invisible compared to yours." But instead, I said, "Nothing much happened today." That was the first lie I ever told him. But despite the quiet ache, I never stopped loving him. We'd still laugh together sometimes over silly things Daniel did or the way he burned toast when he tried to cook breakfast. Those small moments kept us stitched together. Still, I noticed how his eyes sparkled when he talked about other women, not in a wrong way, but in an alive way. And that's when I realized what was slowly killing me inside. It wasn't jealousy. It was the fear that I'd stopped inspiring that same spark. He still loved me, I knew that. But love and admiration aren't the same thing. One keeps you safe, the other makes you feel seen. After Lily was born, the compliments stopped being about me and became about how good a mother I was. And while that sounds sweet, it also sounds like a closing door. I used to be his muse. Now I was his stability. And stability doesn't glow, it grounds. I remember one evening he was getting ready for a business dinner. He asked, "Do I look okay?" I smiled and said, "You always do." He laughed. "You know, Anna from marketing said the same thing today." And I just froze. It wasn't what he said, it was how easily he said it. Like my heart hadn't just skipped a beat for the wrong reason. That night, after he left, I looked at myself in the mirror. Loose hair, tired eyes, soft belly. And for the first time, I whispered to my reflection, "Maybe you're not enough anymore." But I was. I just didn't know it yet.
Chapter 2. The Quiet Distance. You know how people say love is about understanding? I used to believe that too. But what they don't tell you is sometimes the more you understand someone, the less you know how to stop them from hurting you, even when they don't mean to. Ethan didn't cheat. He never lied. He never even raised his voice. He was still the same man who kissed my forehead before bed and texted me, "I miss you," in the middle of meetings. But something was missing. Something invisible, like a melody only I could hear fading away. He started spending more time outside. Business dinners, conferences, late meetings that ran over. And every night when he came home, he'd tell me everything. Who sat beside him, what they ordered, what they wore, how Sarah from the board has this incredible presentation style, or Julia from the PR team could sell snow to Alaska. And I'd nod, smile, pretend. Pretend that it didn't bother me that every woman in his world now lived in his words. He wasn't doing anything wrong. That's what I kept telling myself. He was just being Ethan, charming, observant, effortless. But sometimes it's not the act that breaks you, it's the repetition. And repetition, my dear, has a way of dulling even the strongest heart. I remember one Sunday morning, bright, lazy, filled with the smell of pancakes and burnt coffee. Daniel was showing his father a college brochure. Lily was at the piano humming to herself. It was a good morning, a peaceful one. Ethan sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, and said, "You know, Em, that journalist I met at the charity auction last night reminded me of you when we first met. Same spark in her eyes." I froze for half a second. He didn't notice. He never did. He just kept talking, casual and warm, like he was sharing a sweet memory. But for me, the words landed differently, heavy and sharp. He remembered me through someone else. That night, when he fell asleep beside me, I stayed awake watching him, his chest rising and falling, that faint line between his brows even in rest. I reached out to touch him, then stopped halfway, because suddenly, I didn't know if he'd even feel it. It's a strange kind of loneliness, lying next to someone who still loves you, but no longer sees you the same way. And I hated myself for thinking that, for wanting to be seen when I was already so loved. Days turned into weeks. His company grew. Big contracts, media interviews, international trips. I was proud, truly, but the more his world expanded, the smaller mine felt. Between school runs, groceries, laundry, and art lessons, I started fading into the background of his success. Once, he came home late from a trip. I'd stayed up waiting, wearing the navy dress he once said made me look like a poem. He hugged me, kissed my cheek, and said, "You look tired, Em. Did you sleep at all?" And just like that, the moment vanished. I smiled weakly. Not really. He went to shower. I went to bed. 2 different worlds, sharing one pillow. A few weeks later, we attended a business gala together. The kind of event where everything shines too bright and everyone smells expensive. I wore silver, he wore black. We looked perfect, like we always did. But perfection can be so lonely when it's only on the outside. At one point, I caught him talking to a woman near the bar, elegant, confident, laughing a little too freely. He leaned in slightly, saying something I couldn't hear. She touched his arm, and I swear I felt something inside me twist, not out of jealousy, but realization. That's the version of him the world gets, the magnetic one, the playful one. And me? I get the tired version, the quiet version, the one too drained to look at me the way he used to. When he came back, he smiled. "You okay, Em?" I said, "Of course." He held my hand, oblivious. And for the rest of the evening, I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny, smiled at people I didn't know, and played the role I'd perfected, Mrs. Ethan Williams, the golden wife. But when we got home, I took off my heels, sat at the edge of the bed, and cried silently. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but because I missed the version of us that didn't need pretending. Things got quieter after that. He was more careful with his words, maybe sensing something. And I tried harder to be understanding, to not let my insecurity eat away at what we had left. He'd sometimes notice me staring off and say, "Where did you go just now?" And I'd answer, "Nowhere." But the truth, I was always somewhere between who I used to be and who I was becoming. I started painting again, something just for me. Small canvases, soft colors, quiet stories. Lily would sit beside me, sketching flowers. Daniel would drop by, tease me for getting paint on my face. Those moments reminded me that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's hidden in the small things. A brushstroke, a giggle, a shared silence. But at night, when the house slept, I'd look at Ethan beside me and think, what happened to the man who once couldn't sleep without holding my hand? Maybe I changed, maybe he did, maybe both. Then came the night everything cracked. Not with shouting, but with silence. He came home late again, 3rd time that week. Dinner had gone cold. The kids were in bed. I sat at the table, waiting, my heart heavy but calm. When he walked in, I said softly, "You've been busy lately." He nodded, loosening his tie. "Yeah, we're closing a big deal. A lot of networking involved." "Networking with who?" I asked. not accusingly, just curious. He smiled. Oh, you wouldn't know them. New partners, investors, a few PR women from the firm. Women? He blinked. Yeah, some. Why? Nothing, I said, forcing a smile. You just talk about them a lot. He frowned, confused. Em, you know I tell you everything. Don't start making it something it isn't. I'm not, I whispered. I just wish you'd tell me about us sometimes, too. He sighed, running his hand through his hair. You're reading too much into it, Em. You're my wife, Em. You know that. I know, I said, looking down. But sometimes I wish I could feel it. He didn't answer. He just hugged me. The kind of hug that ends a conversation, not begins one. That night, we slept back to back, and somewhere between the spaces of that silence, I realized something cruel. Love can survive without passion, but it can't survive without being seen. Weeks passed. We found a rhythm, the kind of rhythm people mistake for peace. But I knew better. We weren't happy. We were functioning. He was still loyal, still kind, still mine, just not fully here. And I was still smiling, still standing, still pretending everything was fine. But you can only hold your breath for so long before you start to drown. One evening, Lily came into my room holding an old photo, our wedding picture. She said, Mom, you look like a princess here. Why don't you wear dresses like that anymore? I smiled. Because I grew up, honey. She tilted her head, innocent eyes searching mine. Did Dad grow up too? And for the first time, I didn't have an answer. That night, when I tucked her in, I looked at the photo again. Two people glowing like sunrise. And I whispered to the frame, where did we go? I still loved him. That was the hardest part. I still wanted him to look at me the way he looked at the world, with curiosity, with warmth and wonder. But life had other plans. It was already weaving the next storm, and I could feel it coming.
Chapter 3. The Slow Unraveling. I used to think love died with betrayal, but now I know it dies quietly in the small spaces between trust and attention. After that night of silence, Ethan tried harder. He'd bring me coffee in bed again, kiss me on the cheek before leaving for work, even compliment my new earrings. But something in his eyes was different. Softer, distant, polite. Like he was caring for me, not craving me. We were still a team on paper. Bills paid, house clean, children loved. He worked late, I managed home. He provided, I held things together. It looked perfect, the kind of life people envy on Christmas cards. But in every photograph hides a corner where the light doesn't reach. And in ours, that corner was growing. Daniel was 17 when he said he wanted to study abroad. Mom, I got accepted to the University of Melbourne, he said one evening, his voice trembling between excitement and guilt. I smiled, proud and terrified. That's incredible, honey. Ethan was over the moon. That's my boy! We'll handle everything. You just focus on making us proud. And just like that, it was decided.
Daniel would leave by the end of the summer. Ethan took care of the expenses, the tuition, the housing, the flights. Money was never a problem. Emotions were. I spent those months pretending to be strong, packing Daniel's things, labeling his bags, telling him how excited I was. But at night, I'd walk into his room, run my fingers over the books he'd leave behind, and feel something hollow opening inside me. I wasn't just losing my son. I was losing my anchor, the one who made the silence between Ethan and I bearable. Ethan noticed my sadness, but he mistook it for motherly worry. "You'll be fine once he settles in," he said, his voice calm, reassuring. I wanted to tell him, "No, Ethan, I'm not fine because I'm losing both of you in different ways." But the words never left my lips. After Daniel left, the house felt too big, too quiet. Lily was still home, a teenager now, bright, curious, full of questions. But she spent most of her time in her room, headphones on, lost in her world. And Ethan? He was busier than ever. Business trips, new clients, charity events. One Friday night, I asked, "When are you coming home tomorrow?" He shrugged. "Not sure yet. I have a dinner with the investors, probably late." I smiled thinly. "Dinner with investors, male or female?" He laughed, amused. Really? Don't start that again. I'm just asking." "They're professionals. And besides," he added, "you're the only woman I'd ever come home to." He meant it kindly, but the words hurt, because coming home to didn't mean longing for anymore. That night, I called Daniel in Melbourne. He sounded happy, free. He asked, "How's Dad?" Good. Still working too much." He laughed. "You sound tired, Mom. Are you okay?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to cry, to tell him how empty the house felt, how Ethan and I had become strangers walking the same hallway. But I couldn't. He was chasing his dreams. I couldn't let my sadness stain his joy. So I said, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just miss you." When the call ended, I sat in the dark, phone still in my hand, and whispered, to no one, "I miss me too." Weeks turned into months. Ethan's business thrived. His charm was his currency, and the world kept paying him in admiration. He'd tell me about the people he met, women mostly, confident, elegant, successful, and he'd praise them endlessly, their intelligence, their ambition, their style. And I listened, again and again, until every compliment he gave another woman started sounding like an absence he couldn't name in me. One night I asked quietly, "Do you still find me beautiful?" He looked up from his laptop, startled. "What kind of question is that?" "Just answer." "Of course I do. You're my wife." I nodded. "That's not what I asked." He sighed, closed his laptop. Beauty isn't just about looks. You've given me a family, a home, everything." His words were kind, safe, sterile. And I realized he was describing gratitude, not desire. The next day, I found a message on his phone. Nothing inappropriate, but enough to sting. A woman from his office. "Dinner was wonderful, Ethan. You always know how to make people feel seen." He hadn't hid it. He never did. That's what made it worse. His honesty made me feel crazy, like I had no right to be hurt. When he came home that night, I asked, "Did you enjoy dinner?" He smiled. "Yeah, it went great. Why?" I looked at him, the man I'd built my world around, and said softly, "Do you ever stop to think how your words make me feel?" He frowned. You know I'm just being friendly. It's who I am." "I know.
But it's who you are that's slowly killing who I am. He fell silent. For a moment, he looked guilty. Then his voice hardened slightly, defensive but tired. What do you want me to do, Em? Stop being myself? Stop talking to people? This is my job. This is my life. And what about our life? He exhaled. Our life is fine. You're just overthinking. That word, overthinking, it broke something inside me. Because women like me are always overthinking until the silence becomes unbearable. 2 months later, he suggested something I never thought I'd hear. Maybe we should live separately for a while, he said one evening. I froze. What? Not divorce, just space. We've both changed, Em. Maybe a little distance will help us find ourselves again. I stared at him, speechless. He continued gently. I'll take care of everything. The bills, the house, your expenses. You and Lily can stay here if you want. I'll move to the city apartment for now. I wanted to scream, to ask if he was trying to find himself or someone else. But all I said was, if that's what you think we need. That night, Lily heard us talking. She didn't say anything, not then, but I saw her eyes wide and scared peeking through the doorway. She was only 15, old enough to understand pain, too young to carry it. Ethan moved out the next week. He called every day at first, then every few days. He'd still pay for everything, groceries, school fees, even the electricity bills. He made sure we were comfortable, cared for. But love isn't measured in comfort. It's measured in presence. At first, I thought the space would heal us, maybe make him miss me. Instead, it made him curious about what was missing in his life. He started meeting women, not romantically, at least not physically, but emotionally. He'd tell me about them, just like always. Met this amazing woman at the firm today. Smart, witty, divorced, but you'd like her, Em. Every time, it felt like a dagger dipped in politeness. I'd pretend to listen, nod, even ask questions, because I didn't want to sound bitter. But inside, I was falling apart. He never crossed the line. Not once. But he danced near it, gracefully, fearlessly, while I stood at the edge, watching, breaking, pretending not to bleed. Then one evening, after months of walking through the house like a ghost, I called him. My hands were shaking. The room smelled of rain. I met someone, I said, barely breathing. There was a pause, the kind that cuts through bone. Someone? Ethan repeated, his voice unreadable. Yes, his name is Adam. He's kind, he listens, but my throat tightened. He's not you, Ethan. Silence again, then almost in a whisper, Do you love him? Tears welled before I could stop them. No, I said, but he makes me feel visible again. The other end of the line went quiet. Then, for the first time, I heard him break. If you really think you'll be happier, Em, I'll sign the papers. I wanted to tell him not to. I wanted to say it was just a cry for help, not betrayal. But the words froze. And in that frozen space,
Chapter 4. What Remained Unsaid. The night Lily overheard the call, the house felt colder than usual. She didn't say a word. She simply brushed past me, her face unreadable, her eyes glassy with something I couldn't name. Disappointment, maybe. Or heartbreak. I thought she needed space. I thought she would come back when she was ready. I was wrong. 2 days later, I found her room empty. Her wardrobe open, her favorite hoodie missing. On her desk, a folded note. Short, trembling handwriting that looked nothing like my daughter's. Don't look for me. I just need to breathe where no one is pretending. For a moment, everything went still, as if even the air refused to move. Ethan was downstairs fixing himself a coffee when I screamed his name. He ran up, read the note, and dropped the mug. The sound of breaking porcelain still echoes in my head. We searched everywhere. Friends' houses, the school, the park near the lake. Hours turned into a night, and the night into another day. No one had seen her. It wasn't until the third evening that a call came from a bus terminal 2 towns away. Lily was sitting alone on a bench, clutching her backpack, eyes red but dry. The officer said she hadn't spoken a word since she was found. When I saw her, I didn't lecture her, didn't ask why. I just wrapped my arms around her, and for the first time in months, she didn't pull away. She whispered against my shoulder, "I just wanted to see if you'd come." That sentence, simple, almost childlike, broke something inside Ethan. He turned away, his jaw trembling, his hand shaking like he couldn't hold himself together. We drove home in silence. That night, none of us slept. We sat on the living room floor. No pretenses, no walls, just 3 people who'd been pretending too long that everything was fine. Ethan spoke first. "I don't want to lose either of you." His voice cracked midway. I got so busy keeping the roof from falling that I didn't notice it already had. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. I watched them from across the room, and for the first time, I saw the exhaustion in him. Not just from work, but from guilt. The kind that grows when love turns into routine. Over the next few weeks, life didn't magically fix itself. There were awkward dinners, long silences, small arguments over nothing. But there were also small beginnings. Ethan cooking breakfast on weekends, Lily sitting with us instead of locking herself away, and me painting again in the early mornings when the world was quiet. Daniel called once from Melbourne. He asked about Lily, and I told him she was better. When I hung up, Ethan looked at me for a long time and said softly, "He's grown up, hasn't he?" I nodded. We all had to. Months passed. One Sunday morning, while folding laundry, I found the letter Ethan had never sent. Divorce papers, unsigned. He'd kept them in the drawer, under our wedding photograph. The sight didn't make me cry. It made me breathe. Because somewhere between the silence, the searching, and the breaking, we found something we'd both forgotten. That love isn't about never getting lost. It's about finding your way back, even when the road is covered in ashes. And though nothing felt perfect anymore, it finally felt real. Chapter 5. Coming Home. 8 years. That's how long it's been since the night we almost lost Lily, and nearly lost each other too. 8 years. Enough time for Daniel to graduate from university, find his footing in Melbourne, and fall in love with a girl who reminds me of how I used to be. Hopeful, soft-spoken, a little shy when she smiles. Her name is Sophie. She's studying interior design, and when she speaks, Daniel listens the way his father once listened to me. Funny how life folds into itself. Ethan and we never divorced. We didn't rush back together either. At first, we met only when Lily wanted us both around. Birthdays, holidays, quiet dinners she planned just to see if we could still sit across from each other without breaking apart. We could, barely, at first. Then, gradually, with comfort again. He still lived in his city apartment, sleek, cold, everything in place, but nothing really lived in. I stayed in our old house, the one that had once echoed with children's laughter and late-night arguments over nothing and everything. But every time Ethan came over, he'd fix something. A loose hinge, a flickering light, the leaky faucet I had ignored for weeks. He was always fixing things. I think it was his way of saying, I'm still here. Then, one spring afternoon, Lily came home from college with her usual dramatic entrance, music blaring, arms full of laundry, and casually announced, Dad sold his apartment. I froze mid-stir, the wooden spoon in my hand dripping sauce onto the counter. Ethan walked in a few seconds later, the faintest smile playing on his lips. He said, I figured it was time. I didn't ask what that meant, but that night he brought his bags, just two, both worn from years of travel, and placed them quietly in the hallway. And that's how we started again. No grand declarations, no teary reunions, just two people who had already lost everything worth losing and realized they didn't want to do it again. Now, as I sit here, there's a different kind of chaos filling the house. Laughter, music, the rustling of fabric, the scent of lilies everywhere. Daniel's getting married tomorrow. I watched Lily run around with Sophie's veil, tripping over her own excitement. Ethan's voice carries from the backyard. He's giving instructions to the decorators, pretending he knows what minimalist chic means. When he walks in, there's a faint trace of gray at his temples now. It suits him. He catches me staring and grins. What, do I have glitter on my face again? I shake my head. No, just time. He laughs, pulling me into a slow, easy hug, one that doesn't demand, doesn't promise, just is. That's what we've become. Comfortable pauses instead of frantic confessions. We don't need to fill every silence anymore. After dinner, when everyone's gone to bed, we sit by the window watching fairy lights shimmer across the lawn. Ethan takes my hand, his thumb brushing over the tiny scar near my wrist, the one from years ago when I burnt myself cooking Daniel's first birthday cake. He says softly, Do you ever wish that things had stayed the way they were? I think for a long moment before answering. No, I say finally. I wish we had learned sooner that love isn't about staying beautiful. It's about staying true when beauty fades. He doesn't respond, just presses a kiss to my forehead, quiet and steady. Outside, I can hear Daniel's laughter, Sophie's soft voice, Lily humming somewhere down the hall, and I realize this is it. Not the flawless picture we once chased, not the golden couple people envied. Just us, weathered, imperfect, but whole again, in a way that only time and loss can make possible. Tomorrow, when Daniel walks down the aisle, I know I'll cry. Not because my son's getting married, but because somewhere in that celebration, I'll see the reflection of who Ethan and I once were and who we've become. Before heading to bed, Ethan turns off the last light and says over his shoulder, You know, Em, I think we made it. And for the first time in years, I don't doubt it. Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't the ones that burn bright and fast. They're the ones that fade, flicker, and somehow find their glow again. Quietly, stubbornly, beautifully.